NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so the Nets played 5 games since my last NetsBoy episode, and actually went 4-1. And I mean, that's pretty much the best case scenario I could have expected them to do under the circumstances. And the reality of the situation, they look better. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. This team looks better than what they did at the beginning of the year, but they still got a long ways to go. And we'll touch upon it in a second. But there's a couple takeaways that I had from these last couple of games. The first one, other than the fact that they play a little bit better, is T.J. Warren. He made his debut against the Raptors, 10 points, looked pretty decent for someone who hasn't played in over 2 years. I'm excited for him. I really am. You know, this is a guy who, in his prime, which he still technically is in his prime, but I'm talking pre-injury, averaged 18 and 6. Right? Like, he's a guy who scored 54 points, you know, in the bubble in 2020. Like, he's a guy who is a great energy guy, a two-way player. He's listed at 6'8". He can play multiple positions. He can rebound. He can defend. He can score. There's nothing he can't really do. And those type of players are always a luxury to have. So I'm excited for him. And the fact that he looks comfortable out there only makes this even better. I do think it's going to still take him at least a couple more games before we really see the true flow of him getting more involved. But I really do believe in the next maybe 10 games or so, we're going to start seeing T.J. Warren's minutes go up and up and up, and he's going to be a major factor in this rotation, as he should be, especially with Ben Simmons being out with that injury, with the knee injury that he has, and Watanabe still being out with the hamstring injury. They need some length and athleticism and defensive ability, and T.J. Warren provides that. So I'm excited about it. And the fact is, it's almost like the Nets just made an acquisition 25 games into the season because Warren hasn't played on this team yet. Now he's healthy. Here he is. It's like they went out there and traded for a versatile wing player who can shoot the ball, you know, play defense and rebound. Like, it's fantastic. So I'm excited about him. The other takeaway, obviously, is that Kevin Durant is just amazing. I mean, he single-handedly carried the Nets in the Wizards game and, of course, the Magic's game. They just, he just said, "Hey, I'm just going to drop 40 and call it a day." But we shouldn't be shocked by that now as Nets fans. So that's another takeaway. And then another takeaway is the fact that I don't think it's a coincidence. Throwing my pencil. That the 4 games the Nets won were against teams that don't really have a dominant interior presence. I'm just throwing it out there. The Trailblazers. Well, Nurkic is a big body and he's a good rebounder, but he's not a low-post presence player. Like, he's not someone that a team is going to regularly feed him the ball and let him dominate in the post. So, not a surprise the Nets beat the Trailblazers. Then the Magic. Bol looked amazing, but he's not a low-post player. He was knocking threes down. Not much of an interior presence. Not a surprise. The Nets won. Then they got the Wizards. Well, Gafford had a pretty good game, but their main big is Porzingis, and he's not really a true low-post player. He's more of like a finesse, mid-range jump shot type of guy, three-point shot. Not a surprise the Nets won that game. And then the Raptors, Siakam is probably one of the better low-post players, but he likes to play around the perimeter a little too much, which is why I kind of think he's a little overrated. And, they don't really have a low-post presence, so surprise, surprise, the Nets won. So it's clear as day of what I've been harping on from the beginning, that if these teams don't have a true dominant low-post player, this Nets team has a good chance of beating them because the reality is this Nets team is a decent defensive team. The last 5 games, they held every team under 107 points. The Wizards scored the most points against the Nets in the last 5 games. Even the game they lost against the Celtics, they held the Celtics to 103 points. So And the Celtics, by the way, are one of the best offensive teams in basketball. So the good news is the Nets are showing what they can do defensively. Once again, it's not a coincidence that it's against teams that don't have interior dominant players, but it shows what I've been saying for a while now, that this Nets team Jacques Vaughn should change the personnel based off the matchup. These last 5 games, this small ball lineup that the Nets go out there with, especially now with Ben Simmons being out, with Durant being, the 5 occasionally, maybe TJ Warren being the 5, I don't have a problem with it. Because when you don't have the low post presence, the length and athleticism of these players, like Royce O'Neal, like TJ Warren, like Kevin Durant, right? Like Nick Claxton, right? These are all long, athletic players. That causes a lot of problems on the offensive end. Like the defense, using their length, it gets in the passing lanes. It can, contest shots really well. And that's obviously the strategy in which Jacques Vaughn is going for. But I just am so afraid that once this team starts facing the players with the great interior presence again, the teams with dominant interior players, like Joel Embiid, like Jokic, like Sabonis, like Anthony Davis, like those type of players, we are going to see this Nets team start struggling and having the defensive performances like they did against the Kings, in which they gave up like 140-something points. That is why I still want the Nets to either make a move and bring in a big body, or just start playing Day'Ron Sharpe, who is the biggest body the Nets have. He's not necessarily the tallest or the longest, but he's the biggest. Give him a chance. I still believe that. I still want to see it. I'm not saying he needs to be in the rotation every game, but I do want to see a matchup rotation by Jacques Vaughn against these teams with more interior presence. That being said, these last 5 games, Nets didn't have to deal with that, so that's why they went 4-1. That's another takeaway. And then my final takeaway is that despite the Nets going 4-1, the Celtics game made it clear as day how much farther this team still needs to go. They're no longer bad. They are no longer a joke. The Nets are good. That's what they are. They're a good basketball team right now. But they're not great. They're not at the championship level that they want to get at. And I don't think anyone really thought they were going to be that. I mean, once again, those teams that they beat, the most impressive victory there, I think, had to be against the Wizards, to be honest, or the Raptors, maybe. The Raptors was an impressive victory, especially since they were up 41-17 in that game. But let the Raptors have some life in the second half. But whatever, a win's a win. The Nets are just a good team. And it was clear as day that the Celtics are still just far beyond the Nets. And that the Celtics just seem to have the Nets number. Durant had 31 points, I think, but it was a tough 31. Like, the Celtics know how to guard Durant. And the reality is, the Celtics have just as much of good length as the Nets do. And, in that game, the Nets were down by 10. They would battle back, cut it to like 6, and then it'll be like a 6-0 run by the Celtics immediately. It happened like 4 or 5 times. And it's the difference between a good team and a great team. The Celtics are a great team. The Nets are just a good team. And that shows you the difference. I think it was very eye-opening that the Nets have a lot more to do and a lot ways to go. But it's promising. I think overall, everything is promising. So that's my other takeaway, is that this Nets team is now good, not great. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm pretty pleased. I'm pretty pleased with what I've seen. Because sometimes it's just about, for the time being, beating the teams you should be beating. And that's what the Nets did. They beat the teams they should be beating. Now, moving forward, the next couple games for the Nets, this is, to me, a key stretch for the Nets. Because here I am talking about how they're a good team, not a great team. Well, now they have some very winnable games coming up, these next couple games. And, they're currently, what are they? They're 13-11? I don't even remember. I'm checking real fast. 13-12. Yeah, because they just lost. They're currently 13-12. This is the stretch that they need to start piling up the wins and get a bit over 500. because these next couple games are very winnable. Starting with the Hornets, which is tomorrow night or later tonight, depending on when you're seeing this episode. Hornets have been a bit of a disappointment this season. Obviously, the injury to LaMelo Ball didn't help. Nets need to win that game. The Hawks. The Hawks were a good team. They got off to a good start. They're kind of coming down to earth, but there's no doubt when you got Trae Young and the rest of the talent there, they're a good team, and that could be a loss. But I do think the Nets are better. Once again, there's no true interior player with the Hawks because Clint Capella is not an interior player when it comes to scoring. He's more of a rebounding and defensive guy. So I think the Nets should be able to win that game. Then they got a rematch game against the Pacers after they just lost to the Pacers. They need to win that game. They need to make up the fact that they lost to the Pacers and come back and win. I think they will. Then they got the Wizards, a team that they just beat. Then they got the Raptors, a team that they just beat. Then they got the Pistons, a team they just beat. All until then they finally played the Warriors, who have figured it out this year and becoming respectable again. So you look at the next couple games. Hornets, Hawks, Pacers, Wizards, Raptors, Pistons. The next 6 games, there is no reason why this Nets team does not go at least 4-2. No reason. Anything worse than 4-2 is a disappointment. And guess what? Going 4-2 still just puts them at 17 and 14. Only puts them 3 games over 500, right? Like, I really think they should go 5-1. I think, I'll let us. I can always allow a slip up against some of those teams because, like, the Hawks are respectable, the Raptors are a decent team, the Pacers are those respectable teams, but the Nets are better than. So anything worse than 4-2 in the next 6 games is going to be a huge disappointment. I really think they should go 5-1. And if the Nets can do that, they're going to start establishing themselves in the standings, which is critical, and start separating them from some of the mid-level teams in the NBA. And I do think this Nets team, the way they are constructed and the way they are, they should be, I don't want to say a top 5 team in the league, but right around there. Because, I'm going to be honest. I think in the East, only really the Celtics and the Bucks are really better than the Nets. I really believe that. I know the Cavs have gone off to a great start. Obviously, I know that the 76ers, they're trying to figure it out. They haven't been healthy, teams like that. But I look at this Nets team, and I think that those are the only 2 teams in the East that are better than the Nets. You go to the West, I really just think that the Suns are the only team that I really feel like is definitely better than the Nets in the West. I know the Clippers have played well of late, and they're a dangerous team. We obviously know about the Warriors now that they're figuring it out a bit. The Lakers have actually become decent. The Grizzlies are always a tough team. The Pelicans look sharp. But I really do believe the Nets are better than all those teams. I actually do think this Nets team should be the 4th best team. So around the 5th best team is where they should be, in my opinion. And, they're not there. But hopefully they'll get there soon. But it starts with this stretch of game. 4-2 at the worst, 5-1. And if the Nets can do that, they'll be right in the top of the Eastern Conference, and that's where they need to be. All right, that's the end of this episode. Not much more to talk about. Let me know what you guys think about everything. If you agree with me that Jacque Vaughn should have a different rotation based off of the matchup, do you agree with me that, TJ Warren is going to be a big factor for this team moving forward? If you agree with me that the Nets should go 4-2 minimum in the next couple games, and, also, once again, if you agree with me that they just need to figure out a little bit more of an interior presence, because I just think they do. Let me know what you guys think about everything. And until then, this is NetsBoy, signing off.